Alright, I'm gonna continue reading The Devil in Massachusetts. This is chapter 8, The Weird Sisters. Spring was coming to Massachusetts. First had it come the March peepers, chorusing at night in the marshes, then the horsehair, uh, deeper grumbling of the frogs, and thickets at the meadow's edge showed the uh, velvety pearls of the pussy willows, silver and rose, and the older catkins swelled and shook down their yellow pollen. At the roots of the maples standing in the swamps, the skunk cabbage picked up its bright green ears, and deeper in the woods unfolded the fern fiddleheads and the speckled jack in the pulpit. Then the real flowers came, violets, blue and white, in Paris's pasture. And about the brook, cowslips as sunny as if the place did not lie under a spell. The lilac bugs swelled larger and began to show color about the low overhang of Rebecca's roof. A few warm days would bring the apples out. Cherries were already exploding into blossoms, white against naked black limbs. All at once, grass stood ankle deep in the meadows. No one had seen it come. One day it was simply there. Over it skimmed the bobolinks in abrupt, dripping flight, shedding liquid drops of music behind them. The red-winged blackbirds squalled and chirped, and from an alder twig, a catbird mewed and poured down golden mockery on a farmer breaking ground with his plow. If it's fitting that theocratic Massachusetts should have a physical substructure of unyielding, durable rock, this is not like close to the surface in fertile Salem village, as in the crabbed hills about Salem town, but it is close enough. The plow struck suddenly under a stone. The reins fell from the plowman's hands, and he fell to his knees in a furrow. "Devil take it," he exclaimed. Had he been a papist, he would then have crossed himself. God helped him. God help him. What guests had he invited? Looking about him, he saw a visible change come over the general afternoon. The wind had shifted to the east and now carried to him the smell of kelp on the rocks of the point, uncovered by low tide, and the raw chill so familiar to Salem people. Just when they think warm weather has come at last, a little yellow bird flitted towards him. He stared at the bird. Not not just such a thing hovered over the heads of Martha Corey and Sarah Klaus. The birds had not been visible to most. His eyes had not been opened. The portent was this, that now he had called the devil. He too saw a dreadful bird. Avoid Satan, avoid, he shouted, and hurled a clod at, at the thing. It missed, and the bird skimmed back to the meadow where the bobolinks chimed. Sorry, had a white sweat out of my eyes. Uh, or water, not sweat. Where did I stop at? It was a time when a brave man, or perhaps a stolid, unthinking man, who dared thrust his neighbor, his wife, and his mother, or for that matter, his own wits. The devil had in Massachusetts uh, obliterated the line that divides fact from fantasy. One could no longer, the one could no longer be distinguished from the other. The very concept that they could be different things was forgotten. It was a time when any insect bite might be fatal, for the devil might be in the insect, and the mark he had left indefinable as the witch mark, where the familiar spirit was given suck. Now that there were not only witches but wizards, young girls lived in dread of a spectral rape by the incubus and of giving birth to a demon child. That such had already taken place was demonstrated by the person of little uh, Dorcas Good. Obviously, a child of human bec- could not become a witch at an age so tender. Yet those sentimentalists who said that Dorcas was too young to be in prison think of the facts in the case and hold their tongues. Wow. Young men and older were haunted by the spectrals un, of not unshapenly matrons who at midnight hopped over the windowsill or dropped down from the beam and got into bed with them. Bridget Bishop, conspicuous because her shape, like her body, affected a red paragon uh, bodice, and the trim Susanna Martin were making these unwomanly advances on to honest men and true who were in the proper time could not hesitate to offer such testimony in court. It was hard under such circumstances to attend to chores to set about planning. Even Indian wars uh, was a, was at least known locally had not been so disruptive for routine. For when Indians were about, one could still plow through in Harrow, the musket slung over the shoulder, but muskets were no protection against this sort of thing. If a passer by hove into the view, it was necessary to drop the task in hand and inquire how it goes with the girls who has most lately been cried out on. And when the magistrate sat in court, there was no resisting the sick fascination of what went on there, though it cost a whole day at a time away from work. And now court came oftener and oftener, and more witches came to each. Okay, you know what? I need to reread this because I just missed like half a page and I didn't realize it. So starting page 104, halfway down. He shouted and hurled a clod at the thing. It missed, and the birds skimmed back to the meadow where the bobolinks chimed. But now a toad looked at him from the sod with jeweled round devil's eyes. The devil he could trample and mash, and he did. It would not have surprised him when he got home to find a constable waiting, warrant in hand. But there were only his wife stirring a pot over a fire, and his youngest sitting on her stool, murmuring to something cuddled in her arms. A grotesque little cornstalk doll, dressed up in oddments from his wife's work basket. A doll? God save him, a puppet? The constables have been looking for them lately. Elizabeth Porcher had one, and now the Bridget Bishop. He snatched the thing and hurled it into the fire, and wife and child jumped at the fury of his voice. Who gave her that? What bitch witch made it? One might give the man a name. There were simple people taken in witchcraft, and not in Salem village only, who under examination confessed to just such incidents as their part of letting the devil in. For now on, the plague was going through the village like a forest fire, and more dreadful than a fire ever since. Every effort to control it served only to spread it further. Already it was enveloping Topsfield and Salem town. It was a time when it was a brave man, or perhaps a stolid, unthinking man, who dared trust his neighbor, his wife, his mother, or for that matter, his own wits. The devil had in Massachusetts obliterated the line that divides fact from fantasy, and the one could no longer be distinguished from the other. The very concept that they could be different things was being forgotten. It was a time when any insect bite might be fatal, or the devil might be in the insect, and the mark he left identifiable as a witch mark, where the familiar spirit was given suck. Now that there were not only witches but wizards, young girls lived in dread of a spectral rape by the incubus of giving birth to a demon child. That such had already taken place was demonstrated by the person of little Dorcas Good. Obviously, a child of human could not become a witch at an age so tender. Let those sentimentals who said that Dorcas was too young to be in prison think of the facts in the case and hold their tongues. Young men and older were haunted by this spectraids of non unshapely Mortons who at midnight hopped over the window sill and dropped down from the beam and got into bed with them. Bridget Bishop, uh, conspicuous because her shape, like her body, affected the red paragon uh, bodice and the trim Susanna Martin were making these unwillingly advances to honest men and true who, in the proper time, would not hesitate to offer such testimony in court. It was hard under it was hard under such circumstances to attend to chores, to set about planning. Even Indian wars, at least as known locally, had not been so disruptive of routine, for when Indians were about, one could still plow and uh, harrow, the musket slung over the shoulder, but muskets were no protection against this sort of thing. If the passerby hove into view, it was necessary to drop the task in hand and inquire how how goes it with the girls, who has most lately been cried out on, and who the magistrate sat in the court was no uh, resisting the sick fascination of what went on there, though it cost a whole day at a time away from work. And now court came oftener and oftener, and more witches came to each. 3 came with Mary Warren on 19 April. 8 3 days later, and more soon after. God send that they all come soon, and that the matter be disposed of, and life allowed to go on its normal course again. Yet there seemed to be no hope of that. Confessors were coming in now, and though each witch who confessed gave glory to God, it was to men an awful judgment of never, for never did a witch confess without incriminating others, yet unsuspected. Uh, the 3 who had been indicted with Mary Warren on 19 April were Giles Corey, Bridget Bishop, and Abigail Hobbs. Old Giles, slow of wit, and in his old age humble before his betters, had accepted the theory that the fits of the girls proved the guilt of his wife Martha, had indeed denounced such of his son-in-law as defended her. Now he stood in court and in bewilderment saw the same phenomenon converging on him. "What?" exclaimed Hawthorne. "Is it not enough to act witchcraft at other times, but you must do it in the face of authority?" "I'm a poor creature, and can I help it?" said Gallows humbly. But presently the magistrate aroused his old spirit. They touched on the chord. They touched on the one chord calculated to shock the old man to life, to the independence of his youth. Was it what was it? What was it frightened you? They asked. Apropos of something Goodly Bibber had been saying about the Black Hog, Giles straightened his bow, straightened his bowed shoulders and eyed them man to man. "I did not know that I ever spoke that word in my life," he snapped, and something too snapped in him, something that set his slow intelligence to functioning. Here were the girls squirreling and tumbling and crying that he did it. Well, he didn't. Just so had they howled and cried out on his wife, How did it come that he did not believe his wife, um, but these wenches? It would take Giles Corey, remanded to prison a long time to work this thing out, but once he had done so, nothing would ever again strike his conviction, and he would not again humble himself before anyone. There had always been talk about the next witch, Bridget Bishop. For one thing, he was a flashy dresser. Her red paragon bodice set her style, and for best, one does not wear paragon for best. She had a great store of laces. These she liked to vary and sometimes brought pieces to Samuel Shutup of Salem town to have died. The later, the latter, a Dora Quaker who, because of his faith, had in the past had his own brushes with theocratic authority, and had always thought there was something questionable about the quality and style of these laces, and now stood ready to give his reasons. But the real gossip had centered around Bridget's conduct as tavern keeper. She had two ordinary she had two ordinaries, one familiar in Salem village, another currently outside Salem town on the road to Beverly. It was an old complaint that she permitted young people to loiter at unseemly hours, playing at shovelboard and making an uproar that dis- that disturbed the sleep of decent neighbors. One of these had once burst in on Bridget and hurled some of the game pieces into the fire. It was natural that one who stood out in such vivid relief against the sober habit of her community should be accused of witchcraft. Indeed, Indeed, this had first happened some years ago. Bridget had been accused of malefaction and the death of a neighbor, and might have been condemned but for the intercession of John Hale, who testifies that in his opinion the deceased was crazed and had made away with herself. In the current fever memories of the old episode had been revived. Hell herself was given much thought to the matter, and praying that if the devil had deluded him for before the Lord uh, would now open his eyes to the truth. Bridget in court was a cool one. I do not know what a witch is, she said flatly when they asked her why she was one. She was undone like all the rest of the plainest evidence uh, in asserting her innocence. In asserting her innocence, she rolled her eyes to heaven, and immediately all the girls rolled theirs. It was ghastly. To see the glaring whites of so many eyes, even among the spectators, some sensitive people found themselves, to their horror, yielding to the same irresistible compulsion. No one who saw the providence could doubt that a devil was about working for Bridget. When Hawthorne asked her if it did not trouble her to see the girls tormented, she replied in what her reply was an insolent no. Bridget was taken to Salem prison, and there took the first opportunity to cross-examine the still vacillating Mary Warren and record the disposition of the conversation of Giles Corey and Bridget Bishop were firm in their fashion. Their companion was not, or rather, she was firm in an opposite direction. She was Abigail Hobbs, a wild creature who had long shocked people in Topsfield, her home, by her rambling about the woods at night. At night? Who goes to the woods at night? One of the accusers reported that she was unafraid because she had uh, sold herself, her herself, body and soul, to ye old boy, her own mother, Deliverance, decent wife of William, had once said of Abigail that she little thought of her mother of such a as she lit she little thought of her mother of such a drafter. The disorder of the courtroom had no terror on this Abigail. It was her element. She entered into the spirit of things by plunging at once into hoglong confession. She described with gusto, as if it had been a kind distinction to be present, the unholy meeting in Paris pasture, named 9 witches who had attended with her, and identified the Boston woman in a silk mantle whom Tituba had seen. The other girls fell silent when the confession began, just as they had done when Tituba had set this precedent. Presently, they gave Abigail their active support by nodding their heads, and afterwards several went out of their way to assure the magistrates that this witch was a pitiful creature and that they were intensely sorry for her. They might have accepted her as a recruit to their ranks, but the judges did not see it that way. She was, for all her dolicidity on the stand, too outlandish a personality, even in their uh, credulous ears. Some of her exuberant confessions rang false. Besides, when they interviewed her privately in prison, she cheerfully confessed to real abominations, among them murder. Uh, when when they men or women you killed? Were they men or women you killed? They asked. They were both boys and girls. Was you angry with them yourself? Yes, though I do not know why. What could any society do with a girl like that but lock her up? The magistrates declined to argument the circle. Sorry. The magistrates declined to augment the circle of accusing girls by the addition of the specimen and sent the girl to prison with the rest. The day after Abigail Hobbs' great moment in court, 9 warrants an unprecedented number were sworn out, and by 10 in the morning of 22 April, all but one of these, Mary English, could not at the time be found, had been fetched to Ingersoll's ordinary, and the examination began. The records of the hearing of 2 of these, notably Edward Bishop, stepson, and Bridget, and his wife Sarah, have somehow been lost. However, it was plain that Edward was just another as John Proctor. He had recently had the testimony to whip John Indian out of his fits, and with such success, he had publicly recommended that a similar course be tried on the girls. Now the law him had him and would keep him, along with his wife, Deliverance, and William Hub's parents of Wild Abigail were sent for as a result of their daughter's fantasies. Deliverance looked about the courtroom in panic. The shrilling that the children uh, and set up the moment she came in unnerved her, and so did their cry that her shape had been sighted on the beam above her head. I am amazed, whispered poor Deliverance when asked what she thought of this. She made an effect to give the information required of her. Last last Lord's Day in the meeting house, I saw a great many birds and cats and dogs, and heard a voice say, "Come away." Again, she heard a kind of thundering. From this excursion into natural history, Deliverance laughs by almost uh, im- laughs by almost imperceptible degrees of confessions that is she begun to agree to any statement to put to her by the judges. Have you signed any books? It is very lately then, the night before last. Goody Wild had brought her the book, she said, apparently almost at random, and her helpless testimony rambled on in this fashion. Both the court and later in prison, she agreed to every previous witch's witchhood, and once made a brief sensation by reporting that she had seen the shape of Mercy Lewis as well. But then she remembered the honored position of Mercy and caught herself. Mercy's shape had never hurt her. With more conviction, she reported on the misconduct of her daughter Abigail, the girl who the girl had long ago thrown over uh, parental control and had been much in uh, disreputable society of Sarah Good. Thus, Deliverance. Her husband William was of a sterner stuff. Can you now deny it? Demanded the magistrates, having confronted him with his wife's confession and the lamentable state of the afflicted. I can't deny it to my dying day, roared, 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 roared William, and he did. Uh, the matron, the matron Sarah, wild a little chance to defend herself after the implication of Deliverance Hobbs' confession. Mary Black, a Negro slave attached to the household of Nathaniel Putnam, missed her chance to follow into Tuba's footsteps by her bewildered in comparison of what people wanted of her. Do you pick others? She asked. No, I pin. Sorry. Do you prick others? She asked. No, I pin my neckcloth. When the girls came running up to show their hands all bloodied from mal- malefaction, Mary Black still did not grasp just what it had to do with her, but being led away to prison was no more baffling than many other incidents in her life of servitude. It was unpleasant in prison, but at least she had their rare luxury of sitting with her hands folded in her lap. With the seventh prisoner, something unprecedented happened. The girls looked at him. He was uh, Nehemiah Abbott, nearly 100 years old by his reckoning, a hilly faced man with strands of white hair falling over his eyes, admitted that they had made a mistake. "It is not the men," said Mercy Lewis positively. The girls were less sure. They asked that he be led to a window, and there crawled about him, pawing over his scalp in search of the wind. Some of them distinctly remembered there was no wind. The man was discharged. A wave of relief went over the spectators in the courtroom. It was not that anyone cared so much about Nehemiah, but the painstaking care taken by girls and justices was very reassuring. Innocent people might be taken in the witchcraft, but when by God's uh, providence their innocence was discovered and they were sent uh, their way unmolested. The last witch of the day was Mary S.D., 58-year-old sister of Sarah Cloyce and Rebecca Nurse, youngest of the Townie girls. In court, she displayed neither the tumultuous the tumult tremulousness of Rebecca, nor the explosive temper of Sarah, but carried herself in such grace, courage, and good sense that Hawthorne gave way to one of those moments of doubt, which were his which were his saving grace. "Are you certain this is the woman?" he asked the girls. After all, they had made one mistake about Avid, and since Mary had come to the stand, they had fallen into one of their moods of uh, quiescence. They were eyeing her in silence. Such a question, however, never failed to act as a signal to release a full dynamic of demonic energy. The girls quivered and whimpered as it entered into them, and then howled with pain. The court saw the familiar damning uh, choreography. Mary S.D. was standing with her head a bit to one side. A spirit forcibly twisted the girls' heads into this position, thrusting them sometimes at so unnatural an angle that it seemed as if the necks would break. "You. Oh, goody SD, goody SD," shrilled Ann Putnam. Uh, above, above the gibbering, "You're a woman. You're the woman." What, asked the magistrate, did Mary think of all this? "It is an evil spirit," replied Mary judiciously, "but whether it be witchcraft, I do not know." She was imprisoned with the rest. Her quiet self-possession and her gentle manner continue to make them continue to make their impression. Her very jailers spoke up for her, and the magistrates were impelled to interview the girls again, asking them one by one, "Are you certain this is the woman?" The girls were no longer certain, though their fits continued apace, and they had in them sensational revelations which were resulting in half a dozen arrests a week. Most of them admitted to the magistrates that they were no longer visited by Mary Esty. On 18th May, one of the most wonderful seasons, sorry, on 18 May at a most wonderful season, when the trees are full of young leaf and tender, immaculate leaf that they know only in Mary. Mary was released from prison and allowed to go home to Topsfield. It was a deeply satisfying homecoming. There was never a neighbor but was happy and encouraged that had won her release would also win that her sisters and of such improbable witches as the John Proctors. It is not on record just what Mary did with her time when she got home, but she would not have been a true Puritan housewife had she not addressed herself to the business of house cleaning and baking. For more than this, she did not have time. She was given just 3 days. She had not been home 2 of these before Mercy Lewis was taken violently ill from paroxysms. Sorry, paroxysms. In agony, she would lapse into comas when she lay with her jaws locked. Again, she would revive enough to make her pitiful prayers. Dear Lord, receive my soul. Watchers would hear her murmur, and again, as the plans mounted, Lord, let them not kill. Lord, let them not kill me. Quiet. Everyone who saw Mary's affliction was sure the girl was dying. The news ran across the country, and the magistrates heard it with particular misgivings. It had happened uh, that all the girls, Mercy alone, had not cleared Mary Esty. They had disregarded that fact because Mercy had not expressed her dissent with expressive conviction, was in any case one among many, and the one whose presence some people deplored among the girls. There had always been something a little shy, a little mean about Mercy. If she said yes and Putnam said no, it was young Anne who people would believe. Even now, though Mercy's incoherent outcries were plainly directed at Mary Esty, the authorities would not act on the girl's say so alone, and Putnam and Abigail Williams, who was the youngest of the girls, were also presumably the most innocent. Were stationed at Mary's bedside to see what they could descry. And when they made positive identification of Mary Esty, still other girls were brought in to check their accuracy. It fell to Mary Walcott to make the most complete diagnosis. Not only did she see Mary put chains on Mercy's neck and choke her, but she was able to question her and learn exactly what happened. She had volunteered the shape of Mary Esty, who plainly lacked the discretion of Mary in the corporal state, blinded the eyes of all the other girls, so that they, not seeing her, had supposed her innocent. But Mercy she had not been able to blind, so now, for obvious reasons, she had to kill the girl. This disclosure was complete towards midnight. By now, the strength of Mary was at so low an ebb that it was clear she would not live until the morning. If she were not relieved. Accordingly, the constables were sent after Mary. The Estes had long since blown out their candles and had gone to bed when there come a pounding and shouting at the door. Mary accepted the situation with her usual calm. She dressed, let herself be lifted to to the to the pillion behind the constable, and did not im- and did not in prison resist the jailer when he thrust her up with irons, exactly as this took place, or exactly as one could figure with hourglasses. Mercy came out of her convulsions and fell into deep natural slumber. The magistrates would not again be brought to risk the life of these poor girls by false sympathy for one accused. God had opened the eyes of babes and sucklings, though that was an odd term to apply to the strapping Mary Lewis, what he had hidden from them. On the other hand, the shape of Mary Esty had not stared abroad for the last time. It would appear again not long after the most dramatic and disturbing context.